Hey everybody, Jonathan Broadbent here, your host of UnWoke.Academy. Welcome to another weekly live stream Wednesday. A few things, I won't call them housekeeping notes, they're just a few things to share with you. And one is that on this day, 20 years ago today, I wore this shirt. This is one of a few different shirts that I wore during a lovely wedding ceremony with my beautiful bride, my lovely wife, 20 years ago on the beach in Key West. I wore this shirt. We had part of our ceremony was a wedding on the beach. So we are celebrating our 20th anniversary today. Delighted to share that with you. And another thing to share with you, if you happen to watch Ohio Political News, where I am one of the co-hosts, you know that I routinely hold up a mug, or I've got my mug shot, I'm air quoting that. I've got a mug shot, a picture of me as one of the hosts and contributors to Ohio Political News. And it's got our logo, Ohio Political News. Well, I have a new mug to share with you. I found this a few days ago. I am perfectly delighted to have found this at an event where I went to go and listen to Senator Bernie Moreno speak. None of this has anything to do with our topic of the day, but there are a few things that I thought I would share with you, listening audience. By the way, just for perspective, because it came up recently, someone asked about my presentation style, and I actually have no idea how these types of live streams and discussions come across to you, my listening audience. That is a hint, by the way. I am always open to feedback, encouragement, suggestions, negative, whatever. If I'm doing something that you think could be done differently, I'm always open to that. But at the end of the day, I have a view of myself and my role in this conversation, and it relates back to how I got started in all of this. I was actually a small business owner. I bought a distressed company in 1996. I turned it around, made it profitable, and sold it for a pretty good profit. And one of my best clients at the time did something called pension administration or plan administration. They're what's referred to in the financial and accounting and legal world as a third-party administrator. And in a conversation with the leadership team there, I was paid a very nice compliment, or I've always taken it as a compliment, and that is a comment to the effect that I have an ability to absorb and retain very complex, detailed information, yet am also a good communicator. I pride myself on trying to do both well. And having worked for a few decades in the world of finance, I've interacted with all types. I've done training and education sessions in tandem with things like the IRS Outreach and Education, tax-exempt governmental entities group, and I've done some training at bar associations and CPA conferences, even some various unions that want training on how their pensions, how their retirement plans run. And I've worked and interacted with people all across the spectrum, of banking, insurance, legal, tax, you name it. And I do think that there are some people, especially in the world of finance, who are routinely, I don't know the word that I want here, very polished. They present themselves very, very well. And while that's admirable, personally, I've never actually thought of myself in that ilk. And I've never really tried all that hard to try to present myself in that way. And I wonder, kind of, every once in a while, get on the outside looking in, I wonder how that comes across in conversations about the world of finance, because I think I get the sense that the way that I approach the conversation, the way that I conduct this dialogue with you or unwoke friends, and certainly the things that I'm doing stand out as unique, unusual, or different. And for me, that's a-okay, because I really not only intentionally put myself on the outside of what typically happens on woke Wall Street, but also there are some underlying, persistent, pervasive issues with the way that things are typically done. And there's a big part of me that thinks, if it is broke, do fix it. And a lot of what we see and what we're experiencing relative to, forgive me, I use big blanket terms like globalist banks, because they are. Many of the banks, they turned globalist, and many of them in so doing turned their back on us, the United States. And that's not a good thing, and I'm not okay with that. But woke Wall Street, mega finance, big bank, the big mega investment managers, I'm going to make the case again today, probably in a better way than you've seen yet, that a lot of it is beyond woke. It's downright harmful. So if I'm right, and the way that I conduct myself in these conversations is very different, then I guess my opinion is, okay, so be it. That's what needs to happen. And I'm hopeful that parts of what I bring to you may be, I don't know if shocking is the word that I want, because I think people aren't really particularly shocked. But I want to point out how bad a lot of it is, and how shockingly easy it is to fix this stuff. So to put things at a high level, before I drill down, and I want to share with you something I put together over the last few days. I hope you like it. It really spells out for me what I believe to be the very best value proposition, what I can bring to the table, and what we together, we the people, can make happen. So I'm going to share with you in a minute the video, but let's step back for a moment and look at a high level. If you're concerned about where we are in the United States and the West, and you're concerned about what we're seeing in really the West as a whole, throughout Europe, seeing a lot of very invasive far left conversation and political stance coming out of Canada. The Mexican government has shifted pretty far left. Those things are alarming and concerning. And if you are like most people who's awake and aware, you've paid attention to Doge and the findings of uncovering money flowing from taxpayers in the US through things like non-governmental organizations and nonprofits, and funding the woke left. I think that's irrefutable at this point. It happens. It happens a lot. And if I understand correctly, a lot of it flowed through, and tax credits or tax deductions were given to some sort of quasi religious entities that helped fund the invasion at our southern border, and then eventually also at our northern border, which brought in all sorts of trafficking and drugs and fentanyl and all sorts of stuff All of those things are absolutely a very legitimate concern. And a lot of people are very worried about and concerned and agitate for accountability. Let's bring to light all of this stuff. Let's uncover all of it. All of the things with the accusations against Act Blue and the non-governmental organizations, nonprofits, etc. Hoorah, let's do it. Let's absolutely do that. But if we focus exclusively there and wait, it could be a long wait to get the justice that we feel we deserve and to stop funding the woke. The much easier thing, and it's right at our fingertips, literally, when you receive your statement in the mail from the typical IRA account, 401k, or other types of long-term savings, we are literally funding our demise with how we invest. It all goes back to one of our favorite expressions here at UnWoke.Academy, and that is dis the globalist left, DIS. Dis, I said it wrong, no T, dis the globalist left. It stands for know where you donate, invest, or spend. Because what we fund today becomes the future that the next generation inherits. If we are funding woke, far left, globalist companies and now this time I knew to respond and how to respond. Sorry, Substack fans. For some reason, that's 2 weeks in a row. I've got a strange glitch that happens where the audio cuts out. Last week we had a little gap in the middle where the audio, for some reason, I don't know if it's a software issue or what, but we're back up and running. So anyway, bringing my thought back, I think maybe that's why it happened. Just distract me for a moment. Let me get my thought back in order. We, the people, can have a very immediate effect on funding the woke if we get this conversation out in front of people. And I want to be clear about what that means. UnWoke.Academy, I take my contacts, the huge amount of training and background that I have, both on and working for, and then working in oversight of Wall Street. I bring all of that and just make it all public and share it in the hopes that we the people, grab that and we can much more easily defund the woke. If you think of it, if you agree with me and think of it for a moment like two halves of the funding apparatus of the far left. One is that non-governmental organization, nonprofit, taxpayer-funded avenue, and one is the decisions that are being made typically for you inside of your IRA and 401k. And let's face it, I mean, it's designed to be two things. If you sign up for a company, go to work for a company, and they offer you that sign-up booklet that gives the list of investment menu, and you check a couple of boxes and go into a few mutual funds, that is set it and forget it. And at the same time, you're probably hit with all sorts of stuff that makes it feel complex and daunting. And gosh, I wouldn't ever want to venture anywhere near that because I don't understand any of that stuff. UnWoke.Academy is designed to demystify that, do it easily, simply, quickly, for free, using publicly available data and resources. And we, in a number of steps and a whole bunch of different episodes, I've walked through how to get a sense for how to do that, how to shift the investment dollars that you have out of any woke stuff you might be funding and into better things. Well, there are a few exciting pieces to share on that. One is that out of the research we've been doing, I kind of a spin-off. It was really very organic. A lot of people were asking once we started doing the exposés on BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street and companies like them. I really got from a lot of people, okay, thanks for calling out the woke stuff. where is good to go. And that led to some great friendships. It led to us having Justin Bernier on the show from National Security Index. And Matt Tuttle has been on the show from Tuttle Capital. He's the guy that did Inverse Kramer. He launched ESGX, meaning everything that isn't woke or ESG. And it has also led to the formation of the Financial PMA. The Financial PMA is really just us taking the data and the research and scrubbing out the woke stuff and building based on the non-woke investments that we see. In the meantime, partway through that, on February 21st, and you'll see it in this little short video I want to share with you that I've made as promised. On February 21st, Donald Trump released the America First investment policy. In my world, investment policy statements are really, really important. They tell the financial and capital world, capital markets, how to invest, where the money goes. So what Donald Trump effectively said is stop funding just a handful, a small number of woke globalist companies, and let's redirect and open up capital markets again and refund, use capital markets the way they're supposed to be used, and let's fund American ingenuity and American enterprise. And so, as you probably recall from various previous live streams and podcasts I've done, if you've been following us, I have been tracking. Let me make sure to go over to comments here because I've got a couple of trivia questions I'm going to ask during today's conversation. Get your keyboard ready. I have trivia questions. But I took one of the people that joined the Financial PMA. By the way, I want to keep reasserting that everything that we do, you can grab the information and go anywhere. It can be used and utilized in virtually any type of investment, anywhere that it is, with any financial advisor, financial planner, or if you do it yourself. Ultimately, remember that you are responsible for the results. But connected to that, I do have some people who just sort of threw up their hands and said, I don't really have anybody. And one woman in particular, in mid to late 2024, started communicating with us. And I ended up in some conversations with her. And she said, I don't know anything about any of this stuff. Can you help me? And she had a pretty unique dynamic and circumstance. And I helped her to make some trades and get investments in her account that are not woke in October, just over a year ago. So on early October, she funded her account with cash. I told her what to buy, and we executed those trades. And she bought some stuff in her portfolio that she can see, she can touch, she can understand. She knows what it is. She can track it. She can look it up at any time. There's never any mystery. And she pays no management fee. Unlike most mutual funds and other types of managers, she can see it, she knows what it is, and she pays no management fee. I encourage that for anybody anywhere. You can do that. You can go on. There are all sorts of online discount trading platforms. Throw some cash in there and start doing some trading. I suggest with some amount of your money, let's make sure that it isn't funding the woke. And we were excited about that. And she was very excited. It was the first foray into the investing world for her. So she started paying attention. Those trades were done on October 8th. I looked recently at her rate of return. So she has an unrealized gain in that portfolio. About a week or a couple of weeks ago, she actually peaked out above a 60% return. Well, that's going to have some ups and downs like any type of investment. But I looked it up, and as of Monday's close of business, she is enjoying a 53.43% rate of return. That's what her experience has been with, instead of giving money to like a BlackRock or State Street or Vanguard, whatever, who would, in my book, most assuredly take the same path and put her money in virtually identical investments that everybody else is in, that I call the woke globalist bubble, the globalist bubble. And she would be limping along in what I believe to be fiction. It's fictitious market. The idea that the stock prices of things like Apple is in any way, shape, or form realistic or reasonable is preposterous to me. So instead of that, and by the way, this is not investment advice, this is discussion about how we conduct the research and our encouragement that people stick a toe in the water, at least consider what you're funding. Because I'm going to say it again, I said it a few minutes ago, what we fund today becomes the future that the next generation inherits. So if you believe that some small number of companies really should receive the lion's share of virtually all the capital, and that all other companies that didn't check all the woke boxes, that they should get no funding, then that's what we're going to have in the future. Those companies will enjoy the heck out of it, and they are. The average stock bonus for the C-suite, the chairman and CFO types, I think was approaching $17 million. The last was reported. Can you imagine working for a company that had so much cash? It's so overfunded that they just sort of hand out $17 million bonuses. And meanwhile, there are companies all over the place that are great companies that didn't check all the boxes, and they're not attractive, apparently, on the woke radar, and they're not getting funded. That's not capital markets. That's not the way that capital markets are supposed to work. Capital markets are funding the companies that are poised to do well. It could be the next big thing that make the future, that it have the inventions, the management, the wherewithal to become the next new big thing. So if you're like me, you grew up on all those stories about how these big companies all started in some garage somewhere. And by the way, I know I get this question a lot too. I am not suggesting that all of the investing needs to be in small little startups you've never heard of. Maybe a little bit, going to a few of those makes sense, but there are plenty of companies, including really big ones, big household name companies. They still need capital to operate. They need cash flow to be able to continue to expand and do the things that they do. And the proof, in my book, the proof's in the pudding. We started directing some capital, encouraging investment in things that were decidedly not the woke stuff, the opposite of where politicians and woke Wall Street were pushing everybody's money. And you see the results, 53.43%. And along the way, as I said, in February, Donald Trump came out with that America First investment policy. So to me, the writing's on the wall. I don't think that should be unusual. We have the reopening, the refunding and blossoming of America's capital markets right under our nose. It's happening. I see it happening. And it's not happening fast enough, but the money is coming out of those small number. I think it has to. I think it has to come out of that small number of woke globalist companies and refund capital markets. Get money into the non-woke companies. And if you can enjoy the benefit of that, great. I want to put in another twist to this, because for me, this is what I know best, and it's the sweet spot. We have a lot of conversation about trying to encourage people to think differently about woke Wall Street. Yes, it's true that you're going to find some slick salespeople that drive fancy cars, maybe have a private jet, and they're going to schmooze you and talk to you about whatever kind of money you have. And I hope it's a lot. I hope you've done a great job of saving up for your retirement and you have a whole bunch of money invested somewhere. There are lots of people that will come up and spend large amounts of time and energy trying to wow you and make you think, gosh, that person is so successful. If only I put all my money with them, then I'll really be in I'll be sitting in the fabled catbird seat. Well, maybe think a little bit differently, and maybe think that reducing or eliminating some of the fees that you pay may be beneficial. I talk about that a lot. If you don't have to be paying fees, and sometimes there are layers and layers of fees, and some of it's just out of sight, out of mind, and you don't see it, but it impacts you. And maybe, I think I go a little beyond maybe, it's pretty likely that somebody else is getting wealthy off of your hard-earned work, off of your hard-earned money. So I'm going to pause for a moment, and I'm going to share a video. I put this video together. This is just a short one. If you are on Substack, you can actually find this. I did post it on UnWoke.Academy just yesterday, October 14th, on Substack. The title of this one is Opposed to DEI, ESG, etc. Don't fund it. So you'll want to watch that there. On the other platforms where we're live streaming, that is Rumble, X, YouTube, and Facebook. You can watch this video with me live. Or actually, as promised, I'm going to ask a trivia question. On any of those platforms, if you're on one that allows you to make comment, I'm going to throw some numbers out. And this is where I'm headed with this. It's certainly all well and good, and I hope lots of people individually and on behalf of their families decide to move their money non-woke. Get it out of the hands of the woke left. Find better alternatives that fund things like America First. Clearly, that's the objective. If you're one of those people like me that gets excited about America First and Make America Great Again, and you're excited about what this administration represents. It's a retooling and bringing back American values and advocating for pro-West and our ability to do things ourselves rather than be a service economy and just simply try to, I don't know what the objective of the left has been. I think they just want us all to just buy cheap products from Temu or something. I don't like any of that. I don't think most of our audience does or should either. If you don't believe in that, we need to be thinking seriously about how we fund better alternatives. So by all means, as I said, do that on a personal level. The sweet spot for me, as I started with this live stream, is in retirement plan administration. I've worked on stuff really, really big, up into the many billions of dollars. I've worked on state deferred compensation. I've traveled coast to coast from Southern California up into Connecticut and down to DeKalb, Georgia, and lots of places in between. I've worked with, as I mentioned, side by side doing training and education with the IRS governmental TEGE, the tax exempt governmental entities, training and working on public utilities, hospitals, multinationals, you name it. Those are really, really large pools of money. And I include in that union. There are some big union plans that I've had the opportunity to be part of teams working on those types of long-term investment strategies for unions and governments and large employers, all the way down to very small and startup. In my view, that tends to be big pools of money that receive very little oversight. And it's an environment where we see two things in droves. We see massive amounts of shift to the left, putting billions and billions of dollars in huge sweeps into the far left. And at the same time, there are often unnecessary and very high fees that are siphoned off, that are taken out of the account. So here are some trivia for you. Nationally, there is an estimated $46 trillion in retirement savings. And that means IRA, 401k, 403b, and lots of things like them. $46 trillion. Imagine those $46 trillion in the hands of woke left managers funding the woke left check the box companies, all the woke-a-doodle stuff. Then think in terms of those companies that you might be inclined to boycott or you get really upset with because they're doing harmful, damaging things that you don't agree with. Great. Boycott those companies, but you're defeating your own purpose if you're boycotting the company that you're also funding with your retirement savings. If you are quite literally giving and propping up the share price of things like Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, Amazon, they sort of that clique, that cabal of 30-ish companies that got drastically overfunded, in my estimation. And at the same time being frustrated with them, and that includes all kinds of things. Recently, Costco got in the news for pushing DEI training, racist DEI training for their staff, and there was backlash. And we've seen lots of companies go through that. Target a year or so ago, and Bud Light was one of the early ones. And sure, boycott. But if you stop there and relinquish control of your savings dollars, and I don't care if it's $1,000 or $10,000 or $10 million, whatever it is, if we the people wake up to the power that we have with our invested dollar, we could shift that virtually overnight. Because remember that nearly $17 million stock bonus that I mentioned earlier? Those people, they don't get that stock bonus if their stock price truly tanks. So in this conversation, I'm bringing up two things and I'm tying them together. They can happen separately. They are independent of one another, but they're both terrific opportunities and they are right at your fingertips. Literally, the next time you get a statement from your IRA or 401k, whatever, take a look. Look at how your money is being invested. And as I said in prior episodes, I show how easy it is to track down and show and determine if your money is woke left. By the way, this is a good opportunity to mention Matt and Drew over at Inspire Advisors. They're financial planners. I'm not connected or affiliated in any way. Matt and Drew are not woke guys. They do financial planning that isn't woke, and they're offering to do a free, no strings attached impact report. If you do that, and you'll find their contact info, they've been interviewed on the show a number of times. You can find their contact information easily at UnWoke.Academy. They're going to show you how woke your stuff is. So you don't even have to do any of the research yourself. If you want to do the research yourself, I show how easy it is using free, publicly available stuff in any web browser. Also, if you have a company 401k plan, know that the chances are very, very good that there is a plan advisor fee that's subtracted. It's on an ongoing, regular basis. It's money that comes out of your savings. As you see in this video I'm going to share, there's nothing particularly wrong with that, but far too people know that there is an alternative to that. I've been advocating for that alternative for over 16 years, and we've had some good successes in that And the video is designed to tackle both. What happens to things like 401k when you reduce the fee that's siphoned out of your investments to zero, and at the same time give employees at least an option to invest in ways that isn't woke, that's not funding the woke left. So, as promised, there's trivia. An estimated $46 trillion in US retirement accounts. Of that, roughly $13 trillion is in things like 401k. So I've done a little back of the napkin math and estimate that overall, that marketplace, the advisor marketplace to service those retirement accounts, is probably around $220 billion. So if I'm right, that means about every year, about $220 billion just sort of drifts out of and evaporates from retirement accounts. And it goes to pay all kinds of different people, groups, and entities. It's mostly banks, insurance companies, and Wall Street and different types of financial advisors. That's not necessarily a terrible thing, but it is a big number that is very worth putting under the microscope. The fact that we don't spend enough time looking at that is alarming. Connected to that, there's something called unfunded liability that's a big concern in the United States. Everyone talks about it, everyone's worried about it, and there is a path toward finding a pretty easy to implement answer to addressing it. Unfunded liability, in a short summary description, simply means the difference between what's been promised to future retirees and the amount of money that's available to pay it. So if you work for a company and the expectation is that you're going to receive whatever, 2/3 of your last wages in retirement, is there enough money available to pay you that for your expected lifetime? That's basically kind of a brief description of unfunded liability. We have a lot of it in the country. We have a lot of people who are expecting pretty cushy, comfortable retirement, or some retirement at all, and there really isn't enough money available to cover them. So yeah, of course, we can look at the investments, and many companies that are on the ball and doing their job, they do, and they try to do a good job of anticipating what are good investments. But the fees should be considered low-hanging fruit. The fees should be probably at the top of the list of things to scrutinize. But often they aren't. So that's not so good. My estimate is that, hold on, let me double check my notes here. What did we come up with? So based upon the $13 trillion in 401k plans, that's an estimated $13 trillion, at 0.75%, do you care to guess how much profit is represented for plan advisors? Assuming an average fee on that $13 trillion investment pool for retirement in 401k, at 0.75% fee, do some quick math. Let's see if anybody responds here. How much leaves those plans to go pay advisors? I don't have that Jeopardy music to play here. I'm pausing a minute. I'm not seeing. All right, so yeah, I'm double checking. We are still, we're live on Rumble, X, YouTube, Facebook, and separately on a separate camera and setup live on Substack. All right, so I'm not seeing an answer. The answer is around 19 point, $97.5 billion. Around $97 billion leaves 401k plans. Why isn't that considered low-hanging fruit? Aren't more people talking about that? In this video, we're going to get into an answer that I encourage everybody to be aware of and maybe start to go and advocate for. And yes, absolutely, we can put the two pieces together. If you can reduce, strip out, and eliminate, let me restate that. If you could reduce or strip out and eliminate your fees from your 401k plan, all things being equal, you're much better off. Everyone ends up with more money. Then we can apply that to other types of plans, 403b, 457, etc. IRA, don't have to be paying an IRA fee, especially if you're paying investment managers and fees and an advisor, and if they're simply putting you in the same things that everybody's going into, and it's just simply funding the same woke stuff everybody else is, why pay for it? There are 718,736 active retirement plans, according to my research using searches of what are called tax form 5500 filings. A little north of, or actually just about 719,000 things like 401k plans in the United States. Doing the math, if I'm right, and it's 97.5 billion leaves those plans to go and pay plan advisors, what's the average? What's the average plan fee, if I'm right? If those numbers are good. If those numbers are good, that means on average $135,000, almost $136,000 per year leaves your 401k plan. Yours could obviously be more or less. We're talking about averages here nationally. When you receive that statement in the mail that shows you your fees and fee structure, I really encourage you to look at it and consider the impact. That's where this video comes in. So I'm going to share this now, as promised, and let me make sure the audio is going to work. Let's see, settings, hotkeys. I think we should have audio here. I'm going to drop one ear so that I can hear as well. Wisdom to know the difference. What do 21 different, hold on. I'm Jonathan Broadbent, founder and creator of UnWoke.Academy, where our mission is to defund the woke. Parts of this will prove easier than others. Today's episode is all about super easy. You're going to love this one. If you've ever had that experience of finding a $20 bill when you wash your jeans, this is like that, only billions of times better. I'm going to start us off today with the serenity prayer. You'll understand why in a moment. God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. What do 21 different state attorneys general, Secretary of State of Indiana, American Airlines Pilots Union, parts of the Texas legislature, and the New York City Workers Union have in common? The answer is that they're all starting to push back hard against the use of what I call woke on Wall Street. Things like mutual funds used to have a very defined due diligence process. That's just a fancy way of saying how to select the investments to put your money into, or how to. I'm going to pause right there so that everybody reads this. This is just a brief focus on just one issue, and I'm going to read it for Substack, or just part of it. This is part of an executive summary from ProsperousAmerica.org. That's the website. ProsperousAmerica.org. Executive summary. The Vanguard Group has become one of the People's Republic of China's leading financial backers and business partners. The biggest three asset managers in the world are Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street. BlackRock and State Street have received public criticism for their China investment practices. Vanguard has largely escaped scrutiny, But our analysis causes the Coalition for Prosperous America to believe that Vanguard is investing American capital in Chinese companies at a level and breadth that is unmatched in the United States. The extent of the company's involvement in China may surprise American investors who have placed their savings and trust in the company. This is the tip of the iceberg. And consider this in addition to the other forms of woke funding. I mentioned the funding of companies that you may have decided you don't like because they've got woke practices. They may be pushing agendas and policies like race baiting and things like it that you don't like. This goes to national security. And I'm going to get more on that in a moment. I just wanted to pause and comment on that. Determine which ones to avoid. Fairly recently, that whole system was kind of turned on its head, and new types of metrics were put in place and utilized that were arguably very woke. Things like sustainable and diversity, equity, and inclusion, environmental, social, and governance, as ill-defined as they are, were used to make determinations about how to invest your money. You probably already instinctually know where I'm headed with this, but let's spell it out to be clear. If you're investing money in 401k or IRA or elsewhere for a better future for yourself, one of the things that you should rightfully expect is that the people helping you to make those investment decisions should certainly work in your best interests and have a clear, articulated investment process. And you should rightfully expect that whatever that process is, it isn't anti-American, anti-West, which I argue a lot of the woke stuff is. If you've been watching UnWoke.Academy for any length of time, you may have caught the interview that we did with Justin Bernier from the National Security Index. In that interview, Mr. Bernier outlined for us a presentation that was done to Congress, U.S. Congress, in early 2024, spelling out the use of what are called offshore managers to invest U.S. savings dollars. That means your 401k, IRA, and things like them into the growth and expansion of the Chinese Communist Party. And I'm pausing again there very briefly to point out for our Substack audience, again, I do encourage you to go. It is on Substack. You can watch this exact video. But this is referencing a Washington Times article, BlackRock in China. Nuclear buildup underwritten in part by leading Wall Street firm, report says. Now be clear about what that means. These Wall Street firms we're talking about, they have very little of their own money. They're investing your money. And specifically, they highlight several companies that lead to the expanding military capabilities of the Chinese Communist Party. We, the people, American and Western investors, don't really want that. We don't ultimately approve of that. And when people are made aware that their money is going toward those type of investments, people choose to pull their money. Ultimately, there is one unavoidable financial truth. What we fund today will become the future that the next generation inherits. If you find yourself doing a little mental fist pump when you see go woke, go broke, or hear things like Make America Great Again or America First, you should know that on February 21st of 2025, President Trump issued something called the America First Investment Policy. It instructs banks and the world of finance to direct investment dollars into American ingenuity, rather than a small number of woke globalist companies that have been getting overfunded for the past 5+ years. The reasons for them getting so much funding have everything to do with those artificial metrics that were used that I call woke, like DEI, ESG, etc. So, in other words, a very small number of companies that checked a whole bunch of woke boxes, did a lot of virtue signaling, got a lot of the money. This ultimately led to a series of posts, videos, and research into what we now call the globalist bubble. The globalist bubble, in short, is the overfunding of a very small number of companies based on their woke virtue signaling, which has the added negative effect of underfunding virtually all other companies. So where capital markets used to be a resource for business growth and economic development, we've gotten to the point now where we have just a small number of globalist companies receiving the lion's share of the funding. That's a double negative, and it's exactly polar opposite the America First investment objective. This is not to say that funding American companies only is the way to go. Certainly, many people choose to invest internationally, but invest internationally in a smart way that isn't harmful destructive or counter to American and Western values. Remember the third part of the Serenity Prayer that focuses on the wisdom to know the difference? A lot of people are very understandably focused on Doge, USAID, and some of the funding of the woke left that appears to take place via non-governmental organizations and nonprofits. And while that may hold true, it's going to be a while before we can reliably affect some change there. Inside of your 401k, your IRA, and other types of investments, which I argue is kind of the other half of woke funding, that's an easy change to affect. Last year, 2024, I actually decided to drill down and get better answers on your behalf from money managers. By money managers, I mean things like mutual funds, asking them in a formal request for information about any use of virtue signaling labels like ESG, DEI, and things like them. I actually received exactly 0 formal answers. However, I did have well over 200 phone conversations with people at money manager outfits. Overwhelmingly, the answer that I got from the individuals I spoke with off the record was they didn't really like it, but they felt powerless to stop it. That tells me that the directives from many of these money managers, from the owner and leadership teams, was to go woke, in spite of all consequences, and in spite of what damage may result to your portfolio. On a personal note, in around 2007, 2008, I noticed a trend on Wall Street while working on Wall Street of artificially funneling US savings dollars into a company called BlackRock. They weren't nearly as big and household name in 2007 as they are now, but I saw it as an artificial way of bypassing the typical safeguards in order to funnel and direct IRA, 401k, union, pension, and other types of long-term retirement savings dollars into BlackRock. That commentary on my part led to a lot of trouble and some threats from the lawyers. At UnWoke.Academy, we make our research and findings public in the hopes that many people out there decide to go unwoke. Let's stop funding the woke, or as we like to say, dis the globalist left. That stands for know where you donate, invest, and spend. This special episode is part suggestion, part recommendation, and part ask. Of course, you personally can make an impact. If you make changes to wherever you invest and however you invest to take money away from the woke left, we can all make an impact. However, my area of expertise and the focus that I have had for decades in the world of finance is in retirement plan administration. I'm asking you in this conversation to do one of a few things. Your choice. Ditch the fees, don't pay. Did you know that there is an estimated $46 trillion in U.S. retirement savings? Of that, about 13. All right, so this actually is a segment I've got that just sort of covers the things that I already mentioned. I'm going to jump forward to talking about the impact that you should expect to experience if you successfully reduce or eliminate your fees in the plan to 0. Because here's the thing, well, I don't want to give it away. I include it in this commentary, but there's an element that's not generally known to the public, and I want more people aware of it and advocating for themselves and talking about it. The podcast, I wanted to see the impact on $100,000 with a 1% fee over 30 years. 1% is typical to find in small plans, and actually you'll find some very small plans with fees north of 1%. That is a significant burden to retirement savers, especially small savers just starting out. The thing that most people don't know, because it's seldom talked about, is there is no actual requirement that the employees of a company offering a 401k plan are the ones that have to pay the fee. In fact, there is no stipulation that the employees have to pay the fees for any of the providers connected to a plan advisor or otherwise. This isn't commentary on the use of a plan advisor. There are some companies that don't have a plan advisor. The ones that do should push and expect the very best service at the lowest possible fee. What we end up with often is the opposite. To put this conversation and my perspective in context, I started feebased401k.com. That was my original website, and later added feebased403b.com in 2009. All right, I've already mentioned that part. So you can go back and let me change this and drop this out of the scene. All right, so you can go back, you can watch that whole video. I get into how it's done and how to advocate for that. But in today's live stream, I wanted to at least make people aware. I've got a few different places, or actually many different places, where you can find this and find links to it. Watch this video, share it with people. If you know people who work in business administration, in the benefits office, benefits administration, human resources offices, if you know lawyers who work directly with businesses on business administration, or accountants that do accounting work, bring this conversation up. More people should be talking about it. So yes, of course, and as I said earlier in the conversation, bringing together two different pieces, but they're very complementary. We should be talking a lot more about what we're funding with things like retirement savings accounts. You've got mutual funds. Have those managers gone woke left? Are they taking your money, that estimated $46 trillion in retirement savings accounts for the US, and are they funding things like, as I pointed out, and that was actually presented to Congress in early 2024, that report, that exact report. I know the people that created it and presented it to Congress. Are we funding, are you funding the expansion of the Chinese Communist Party and their military arsenal? The chances are pretty good. If you have international investments, a lot of it is going into that stuff. And if you disagree, it's your right, and I would argue your responsibility, duty to know, to be aware of what you're funding. Yes, it's true that mutual funds can be a little bit difficult to unravel, but I go through that in great detail, and I show you using free, publicly available data, using any browser, and how to start getting those answers free, quickly. I've timed it in prior episodes in under 30 seconds. You can pull up, using free, publicly available data, at least some preliminary answers to whether or not you're funding bad things. That includes the whole realm of woke, the DEI, ESG. If you're funding the companies that have cowered to corporate equity index, know those things. And relatedly, in a 401k plan, know that you can go to the employer and talk about, at least encourage some discussion about going flat fee if your company has a plan advisor. And I want to be clear about what that means. There's often some confusion about that. If somebody talks to you personally and sits down and says, what's your wife's income and what's your husband's income and how many kids do you have and insurance and all that, that's financial planning. That's great. If you have a financial planner, hoorah. By the way, you should also talk to Matt and Drew and check them out. If, by the way, you talk to Matt and Drew, you end up liking them. As I've said, there's no affiliation, there's no connection. If you like them and they do that impact report for you and you end up working with them, their fees are exactly what their fees are for everybody. They have actually agreed to compensate UnWoke.Academy, so something may come back to us. That would be greatly appreciated, but it's not necessary. Wherever you go, we hope that you are happy, serviced well, your fees are reasonable, and that you are not going woke. But that is different from a plan advisor. That's somebody, and that's my area of expertise. That's my specialty. That's what I did for decades. I'm the person who has the technical expertise to go in and design it and administer at the corporate level 401k plans. That means things like deciding what goes in the investment menu, what's reasonable, assessing the fees, the plan's design, how the education is implemented, all the sort of in the weeds stuff. That's people like me. It's a different type of advisor. If your company has one of those, I hope that they're good. Push them. It's a big part of the video that I released, that I just shared some of with you. I show you how to push for the lowest possible fees from them with the best possible service. And if you can get them to go to a flat fee, and if your company, and this really, it tends to work best and it's easiest with small to mid-sized companies. If the company is profitable and can arrange a direct fee, then your fee on the plan drops to zero. You literally will stop paying fees. Everything else being equal, whatever your investments return, you just get more money. You keep more of your money. It stays in your account. It compounds over time. That's what this is. That's the difference. And you see in that little video clip and in the short outtake that I did, this is a $100,000 investment at 7% interest if the employer is paying something. They negotiate that directly with the plan advisor. They pay them whatever, X $1,000 per year to service the plan and do the things that they do, and hopefully they do it well. That's the employer paying, and it's perfectly legitimate. This is also perfectly legitimate for the employees to pay, but it's not necessary. This is the result of that. Remember, the estimate based on the number of plans in the U.S. and total marketplace and total value of U.S. retirement plans of almost $136,000 per year. That's average, coming out of the plan to pay the plan advisor. So this is a bump. This is like a raise without doing anything differently. This doesn't even tackle what the investments are. I hope that you do that also. But that's the objective of this conversation and the reason for that video. I've kind of combined the two. And ultimately, in the video, I throw out what I consider to be an extraordinarily reasonable fee, a flat fee. I have a lot of experience with this, so a few things all at once. One is, if you work in finance and you like this, copy it. Copy everything that I'm doing. Duplicate it, because it's a way more honest, straightforward way of conducting business and conducting yourself as a plan advisor. If you're an employee of a company that offers a 401k plan, go and see if you can get whoever your plan advisor is to switch. See if you can get your company to negotiate some sort of fee directly with them so that you can achieve this. This is just using $100,000 over 30 years at 7%. The difference between 7% versus 7% minus, I think for this one we did a 0.75%. Actually, I double check. This may be a 1%. I've done a whole bunch of these slides for different presentations. It's either 0.75 or 1 full percent. But look at that difference. The difference is over $220,000 more in your account, all else being equal. That's just common sense. More people should be having that conversation. More people should be aware of that as a possibility. And as I said, oftentimes what I find is that small employers, and it's common to find with small employers, if you've got, let's say, the total retirement, the total 401k is small, some $5 million is saved up for 80 employees or something. Oftentimes you find that like around 5 people represent maybe half of that. And to tell them that instead of you, business owner, or the sales manager, or the whatever, the controller and benefits director, whatever, the highly compensated, the people running the company, the people who are in management, and telling them, instead of having this sort of fee deducted out, if your company's profitable, go to your plan advisor and negotiate a fee directly. And I will continue to beat the drum and advocate for that plan advisor to do I can't say better job, hopefully a very, very good job of truly screening the investments that are made available in the plan and giving you some options that aren't woke. At the same time, I'm encouraging you to understand what that landscape looks like, because If you are well armed with good information, you can go in and advocate for better investments and give yourself access to things that aren't woke. In a beautiful world, you can accomplish both. You can get the employer to strip out and eliminate the plan advisor fee and give you access to better investments. If you're in a big lineup that's all Vanguard, consider that graphic, that image that I showed, spotlighting Vanguard as one of the chief investors in the growth and expansion of the Chinese Communist Party. That's a research report that's been presented to Congress. And people might argue against it. I haven't heard anybody yet. So I think our politicians are quietly acknowledging that that's true, but they're powerless to change it. You're not. You are not powerless to change how your money gets invested. And connected to that, I show in there are a whole bunch of graphics of lawsuits. We now have American Airlines Pilots Union is winning against the use of ESG in these fake metrics, in these veneer that money managers put on virtue signaling. It was easy money for them for a while, but now the other shoe is dropping. Lawsuits are percolating. If you're a insurance sales agent, if you're a financial advisor of any sort, if you work in tax and accounting, benefits, payroll, anything connected with that, if you have questions about this, contact me. I've rolled out a special offer of a flat fee of $5,000. That is if all else fails. If you can't get what you need out of your current structure, consider that. I'm throwing down the gauntlet to show what can be done. And for reference, I include this in the video. There's a reference there. When I worked on Wall Street doing this, I was the specialist who supported other types of brokers and advisors. They would sort of, I have to air quote this, they would sell 401k plans. And then in order to administer them properly and make sure they stayed compliant and were offered fairly, I or somebody like me had to be included in that conversation. When I was working on Wall Street, I couldn't actually even take a phone call from or communicate with a company if the revenue to that firm I was working for wasn't at least $10,000. I would say the average was probably $70,000 to $100,000 in fees that company collected. It's very doable to strip out most all of that and still provide exceptional service to plans. That's an encouragement to other types of financial professionals. You can do it. Separate yourself from all the conflicts. I'm going to include an analogy. I've done this a lot since I launched UnWoke.Academy, and I hope it clicks. I hope it resonates. Around the time when I organized and formally launched UnWoke Investing, which became UnWoke.Academy. It was really originally just an email newsletter calling out the stuff that I was seeing. Around that same time, COVID hit, and there were some doctors within the medical community who started to balk and ask questions about COVID protocols and what was in the shots, etc. One of many that caught my radar is something called America's Frontline Doctors. I have said this hundreds of times. I view that as a literal roadmap to UnWoke and what we're doing. There's no connection or affiliation, but my view, my role, my job here is to be the person within Wall Street, within finance, formerly Wall Street, who questions those things. Why are we funding what we're funding? Why are so many mutual funds overly invested in virtually the same things with very little diversification? Why are capital markets not as broad as they should be? Why are so few companies, or have been over the past 5+ years, why are so few companies getting funded? All of those harm America and the West. So just like America's frontline doctors and a bunch of medical people like them broke off and said there's a healthier, better way of doing it, I'm suggesting exactly the same thing in the world of finance. Ask these questions. I literally am one of those people who now, kind of as a direct result of COVID and what happened, I pay very close attention to the foods that I eat, the health health supplement industry, the healthy behaviors, what's in shots. I now question all that stuff. And I think very much the same way, and I have been since probably about 2002 in the world of finance. I ask a lot of questions. It's not common, it's not popular, but I don't care. I want more people asking those questions, other financial professionals and otherwise. And if you can strip out some of the fees, everyone ends up to the good, except woke Wall Street, mega bank, and insurance companies. Get rid of some of the fees that you're paying them. They have enough money. Stop paying them so much. That is the mission and the objective. Here's the last piece of the puzzle, and the reason that I'm doing all of this right now, there's a thing that takes place typically in the last quarter of each year, October, November, and December. In my world, we jokingly refer to it as a beauty pageant. What it is the benefits review. So there's that benefits review. A lot of the benefits for employee groups are evaluated, and the chances are pretty good that whatever company you may work for might be evaluating your plan advisor. Push this conversation in front of them. Get them talking about what they're getting in exchange for whatever the fees are, and get them thinking in terms of maybe stripping that fee out. Again, this doesn't include me. You can take the information and run with it. And as I said, I hope that lots of advisors get pushed into behaving in this way. Where am I there? Pointing correctly. Get pushed in this direction. If you can't get it done, consider me an option. I would love to grow and expand the conversation. I will push once involved in retirement plans and working with employers out there. I will drive a lot of conversation into stripping out the far left woke bent of many of the investment options in, I'm going to say, most retirement plans, most plans out there, virtually all the ones that people are inclined to share with me and the ones that I can view. And yes, a lot of that is public information. And I do a lot of research. A tremendous amount of the $46 trillion is right under our noses, is directed into far left, woke companies, causes, and countries. Let's cut it out. We have the power. This has been another live stream of UnWoke.Academy. Thanks for tuning in and joining me. I hope that you will like, comment, share, and if you are in a position to do so, please consider supporting us as we've shifted from an advisory type of group into the model we currently have. We rely substantially on donor contributions and subscriptions. It's not to say that, how do I want to put this? Everything is done and shared for free, because I believe that much in the importance of defunding the woke. If you can support us, it'd be greatly appreciated. I'm Jonathan Broadbent. Thanks again for tuning in.